Hello, Chocolate Girl TV back with another video. And you see the title. When I came across this, I said, okay, I'm going to do a video on this. About the serial killer John Wayne Gacy from Chicago. It's an article I'm going to read. It said, when the discovery of more than 24 bodies stashed under John Wayne Gacy's house near Chicago was making headlines all over the world in the late 1970s. Francis Wayne Alexander's family in North Carolina didn't think much of it. The way they saw it, Alexander had cut communication off with them because he wanted to be left alone. Then came news this month that for more than 40 years, the man they knew as Wayne was known as victim number 5 in the city where he had gone to start a new life. They was told that the DNA test on the remains on one of the half-dozen unidentified victims of the notorious serial killer was Alexander. They just loved him, but they thought that he wanted nothing more to do with them. So that's why there was never a missing person report. Cooks County Sheriff Tom Dark said at a news conference Monday announcing the latest victim identification. Though Dark said Alexander's mother and other relatives didn't want to speak publicly about his identification as Gacy victim, Alexander's sister Carolina Sanders made clear that the family never stopped thinking of what might have become of him. It was hard, even 45 years later, to know that the fate of our beloved Wayne, Sanders wrote in a statement by Dark's office. He was killed at the hands of a vile, evil man. Our hearts are heavy, and our sympathy goes to the other victims of the family. We can now lay to rest what happens and move forward by honoring Wayne. Alexander's remains among 26 sets that police found in the crawl space under Gacy's home, just outside the city. 3 other victims was found buried on Gacy's property. Another 4 who Gacy admitted killing was found in a waterway south of Chicago. 8 victims, including Alexander, was buried before police could determine who they were, but Dark's office assumed that the 8 sets of remains in 2011 called on anyone who had male relatives disappear the Chicago area in 1970, where Gacy was trolling for victims to submit DNA. Within weeks, the sheriff's office announced that they had identified one set of remains as those of William Bundy, a 19-year-old construction worker. In 2017, it identified a second set of 16-year-old Jimmy Hankerson, who disappeared after he phoned his mother in Minnesota and told her that he was in Chicago. Wow. Yeah, that if anybody know John Wayne Gacy, that was one sick individual. He I don't know what to say about John Wayne Gacy, but I do know it was a movie that came out about him, his life in 2003, and Mark Holden played him, and he did a good job. And if you don't know who Mark Holden is, he was the one that played Francis in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He was the one who had Pee-wee's bike stolen. He played in the very first Leprechaun. He played the guy Ozzy, and he played in Teen Wolf, the one with Michael J. Fox, the little chubby fat guy. That's who Mark Holden is. Mark Holden did a very good job in the Gacy movie. The movie is called Gacy. It came out in 2003, and he did a good job. I really did like that movie. I remember I rented that movie at Blockbuster. That's when Blockbuster was in back then. You know, some of them movies would go instead of going to the theaters, they'd go straight to DVD. So I had rented it one day, and actually, the guy that was behind the counter at Blockbuster, he told me it was a good movie. He said you would like it or whatever. So, yeah, Mark Holden did a very good job in that movie. But, yeah, John Wayne Gacy was put to death in 1994 or whatever. All he did was rode around in his car, and just like in the movie and just like in his article, he lured boys into his car. But, you know, he would have alcohol or he'll have marijuana and stuff, something that he know that they like. And then once you go to his house, you'll never be seen again. because he would kill you. Like I said, y'all need to watch that movie. That movie was crazy, but it was good or whatever. And it brought some kind. I'm glad it brought some kind of closure to this latest victim. 45 years. Yeah, that's something. Francis Wayne Alexander. Yeah, he was from North Carolina. I wonder what part of North Carolina he was from, because I'm from North Carolina. And then, it's other victims I heard that, they still haven't identified, whatever. So I hope, they find their remains just to give their family some kind of closure. So my heart goes out to Francis Wayne Alexander and all the other guys that was victims of John Wayne Gacy. I think it was 33 of them. Yeah, I think it was 33 of them. Yeah, my heart just go out to all of them. I'm going to read more of the article. Let me see. Where did I stop off at? Okay. Dart and Lieutenant Jason Moran shared what they knew about Alexander. Born in North Carolina, he moved to New York where he was married, and then to Chicago in 1975, where he soon divorced. The last known records of Alexander's life was traffic tickets he received, and the last one, which came in January 1976. Unlike many victims who was lured to Gacy's home with the promise that he would get them construction work, Alexander worked in bars and clubs, and there was no record of him working in construction or having made contact with Gacy. But Alexander did live in the area that Gacy lived at. And some of Gacy's other victims have lived there too, including Bundy. That was one of the victims that they had found his remains in 2011. Unlike what Bundy and Hankerson, who was identified because family members, he headed Dark's 2001 call from public to submit DNA. Alexander was identified through a partnership between the Sheriff Office and the DNA Poe Project, the nonprofit compared victim number 5 DNA profile to the genealogy website to find potential relatives that led it to the Alexander family, and Alexander's mother and half-brother provided them with DNA. Between the genetic testing and financial records, reports, and other information, the investigators was able to confirm that the remains was Alexander's, and they was able to get a general sense of when he was killed, because they knew when the victims was buried on top of him went missing. Dark and Moran said the department may be able to use the method to identify Alexander scores of other people in the county who died and was buried anonymously. This is one of the newest investigation tools for investigators of missing an identified person, Moran said. See, back then they didn't have all that stuff they have now. All this DNA, and they using and ancestries and all. They didn't have all that back then or whatever. Back then when he was killing all these boys in the 70s and stuff. So it was hard to them to solve the case. But now they got all this stuff now. They can solve it. Dart declined to give Alexander hometown, saying that the family hasn't said if it wants to bring his remains to North Carolina, keep them where they've been buried all these years. But in the news release, the sheriff office did thank the police department in Irving, about 35 miles south of Raleigh, for his help. Okay. The submission of DNA from the people who suspected Gacy might have killed their loved ones have helped people solve at least 11 cold cases, homicides that had nothing to do with Gacy, who was executed in 1994. It also helped families find loved ones who, while missing, was alive, including a man in Oregon who had no idea his family was looking for him. Yeah, that John Wayne Gacy was crazy. What gets me, he was a clown. He would go to these children's hospitals and stuff, do them events and stuff, and then at these parties and stuff. He just had a lot of people fooled, but that's how some serial killers is. They psychopaths and stuff. So my heart goes out to the families of all the victims. Some victims I read in another article, they hadn't been identified. I hope, they just to bring some kind of closure to their family or whatever. you know, it's been like 40 or 45 years. I hope, you know, all the victims, their remains be found, you know, just to give their family some peace. So, yeah, that's the end of this video. I hope everybody have a, well, this morning, a blessed morning, and I'm out.